For a long time, the majority of people that can't code or are code averse really were kind of gatekept from being able to take a thought and turn it into a reality, especially when it comes to building something like a web application or an app in general. A lot of tools have come out in the past few weeks and even months that help people go from an idea or a prompt to a web application. But up until now, these were tools that were really good at taking any idea that a developer would have and help them build on it quickly and iterate quickly. And while some of them are very powerful, Replit Agent is the first time that I've seen that anyone off the street can go and build a web application in literally minutes. In this video, I'm going to show you 4 applications that took me only 2 hours to put together just by going back and forth with an AI without writing a line of code myself, without any form of intervention outside of giving maybe an API key. And at the end, I'm going to build an application just on my phone using the Replit app to show you how anyone can literally build an application, even if you're having a conversation during a meeting or a business arrangement or even a business pitch. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark, and I've been running my own AI automation agency called Prompt Advisors for the past 2 years. And we help companies in all industries better understand how to use AI in their workflows. Now, I've given more than enough suspense, so let's dive right in. If you've never heard of Replit, it's basically a cheat code to be able to build a software application and deploy it very easily in a way that you can share with everyone without having to, build it on AWS or Azure and GCP and figuring out basically how to be a full stack developer and push the code to make it more scalable and usable. So if you subscribe to Replit's core plan, you'll be able to see this new feature on the homepage called Replit Agent in early access. And how it works is that you can either type or attach an image of an inspiration of what you're trying to build, whether it be a user interface that you really like, or perhaps a flowchart of what the plan is for the application and how it should work with client interaction. It's up to you what you choose. And if I write something here like, I want to build a pretty calculator app where the numbers make funny colors when they're selected, and then I send this over, it's going to say that Replit Agent is in early access. Now, what it's going to do is super cool. It's going to try to think outside the box and suggest a few features that I haven't even mentioned before we start the plan. And it starts thinking and starts building behind the scenes all the different code. Now, you'll see here, it's already come up with a plan, and it thinks that I should add things like adding more advanced mathematical operations, maybe implementing a history of calculations, creating themes or palettes to choose from. So let's maybe click on create themes or color palettes for users to choose from. One thing I noticed while building these things is when it comes to history, building some form of database to maintain history, or when it comes to building authentication, like login or registering, it struggles quite a bit. Naturally, it's still in alpha, but something like this should be doable. So if I click on approve and start, it's going to start going through building every core component of that application, just like it's an actual web developer. So you can see here it built a .py file, which is Python, kind of the main Python command center where all the functionality is dictated. And now it's building a JavaScript portion right before our eyes with no intervention from me. It's putting together the HTML, which is basically the core web page that you end up seeing and interacting with. And then it's packaging all of it within an app that we can actually use and test. And you can see here, it put together that calculator with no additional intervention from me. And if we actually try to use it and say, 4 plus 3 equals, there you go, it equals 7. It's already working. And every time I click on the keys, you'll see that we're getting a different color of that key. And I had no means to play in that functionality, which is awesome. Unlike, let's say, Claude, where you can render something within the user interface and potentially use it, you are literally a couple clicks away here from deploying it and being able to share and name that app and send it to whoever to actually test it out. So that's the one key wow factor, in my opinion, because you can go from literally thought to idea and you can share it and actually use it on your mobile, your iPad, or wherever. Now, if we want to push it a little bit, I can say, hey, I want to be able to maintain history of the calculations that I input. It will take that into account, and it should try at least to create some form of mini database where the memory is actually stored, again, without me having to lift a finger. All right, so we actually got this little calculation history here. So now if you say 8 plus 9 equals 17, it maintains that. And if we refresh and we say 4 plus 3 equals 7, it maintains that. So somewhere in the background, it either set up some form of database or created some form of in-session memory to maintain that, which is so cool that I didn't have to figure that out myself. I can literally just go from here, click on a new tab, and literally share this with someone, assuming I deploy it, and it's just usable instantly. Now I'm going to show you a few applications that I was able to put together with enough back and forth. They weren't as easy to put together as this because they're more bespoke, a bit more meaty, but eventually it still did work, which was super impressive. So numero uno, I put together a company valuation calculator that takes a few inputs about a company, and then it sends that information to OpenAI to come up with some form of valuation and some documentation as to why it's valuing the company in a certain way, if it comes up with a value at all. Now, initially, all I said was I want to create a dynamic calculator that will help you calculate the value of your company using OpenAI behind the scenes to take the inputs and come up with a number, as well as a full written assessment. And it did a good job initially, and all I did was give it the OpenAI key when it prompted me, which I found was super cool. I didn't have to go behind the scenes and figure that out and somehow inject it in the code. It just took it from here and it securely inputted it into the application itself. And if we scroll down, we'll see one element here that really impressed me and gave me that aha moment that this might be a bit different from all the other applications. It actually took a screenshot of what it had done to make sure that it was matching my goals and priorities, which I thought was an amazing feature. And I can only imagine when video comes out, text to video comes out, and you can actually share a video of how this works, eventually it'll be able to record an entire session of it trying to interact and click with that application, which will make this iteration process even shorter. And then it actually gave me test cases to put into the app to make sure that it actually works, which again is a nice little feature that typically I'd go to GPT and say, hey, here's my app, give me some sample values for me to test. And after a few more back and forths, we got to this product where I can click on calculate valuation, and it will actually send that request to OpenAI, come back with a valuation if there's enough data or if it's sure enough, and then give some form of justification as to why it came up with that valuation. Now in this case, it's saying NA, but it will say estimated value range 10 to 15 million, assessment of the tech corp financial health and potential, yada, yada, yada. But you get the idea here. And this alone made me question not software engineering, because trust me, it's much more complicated to build something scalable that doesn't use necessarily some spaghetti code to make sure it works today, next year, and the following year. And after I put together this smart form, it made me really question not software development as a whole, but more so no-code apps like Flutterflow or Bubble, where you need to know how those frameworks work and all the underlying tools and features to be able to build something like this. This made me question, a year from now, will we still need these low-code tools? I guess we'll find out. On their main homepage, one of the actual suggested apps is a waitlist. And pretty much with minimal instruction, you can see here, I went back and forth maybe a couple times, it was able to create a landing page with features, with this slight little hovering feature, and a waitlist that actually works. So if you enter your name and email, it will actually populate that name and email in a database that it's set up without me doing anything to actually intervene there. So if we go behind the scenes and check the database that they created, we can ask, give me a subscriber whose name is like Mark, and run the query. You'll see that it stored the name and email written on the waitlist on the front end in the database on the back end that it put together. To me, stuff like this is a big deal because these are the little things that would stop an average Joe who doesn't know anything about coding from actually being able to realize their idea onto not paper, but at least a web page. Now, the third use case is really going to wow you. So if we go to the next tab, I'm going to actually put this in full screen so you can appreciate how cool this is. I was able to create, with enough back and forth, literally a version of ChatGPT using OpenAI behind the scenes and maintaining session history on the left-hand side. So if I say something like, hey, how are you? It will actually send that request to the backend to OpenAI using GPT-4o Mini and come back with a response. And if I want to create a new session, just like ChatGPT, I can click on this green plus button. It will store the time and date of my last session, and I can say, hey, write me a story about an AI agent taking over software development. And there we go, really quick. And I could probably ask it things like, hey, I want you to actually create this effect where the letters show up as you're getting it from the API response just like ChatGPT. Now, while this looks pretty straightforward and plain, getting this chat history to actually pop up was quite a pain in terms of going back and forth, and it was mainly, if not completely, user error. So if we go to the actual chat history, I initially said, create an AI chat app that maintains history and should be a full screen web application. Now, when I said maintains history, I assumed that it would understand I want a sidebar that maintains that history. What it understood was I want to maintain history throughout the actual session itself, which is natural. It would happen by default. So I kept going back and forth, thinking it was its problem. Is there a way to maintain chat history? And then it didn't understand it. It was only until, and you can see I'm stubborn here, saying I receive a response but not chat history. As soon as I go down, I keep saying the same thing over and over again until I say, I was hoping for a sidebar that shows different chat sessions. Is that possible? And that's when we finally got to this progress here, where we were on our way and all I had to do was just go back and forth that I wanted each session to be timestamped, similar to GPT, but obviously GPT goes the extra step where it tries to name the conversation. And I could probably go that extra step as well, where we would use OpenAI to actually go and name the tab based on the first back and forth engagement with the chat. But all to say, this is sometimes a battle of words. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually provide all the code to all of these apps in the description below in the Gumroad link. And I'm going to throw in the chat so you can learn from my naivete. If you want to support the channel, would love it. If not, take it on the house, all up to you. And we'll go to the last one that I prepared before, and we'll get to our live demo on the mobile app. All right, so for the last app, I actually drew inspiration from an actual tool worth millions of dollars called Jasper. And how Jasper works is pretty much, they have different forms that you can fill out. They're kind of like smart forms that let you do anything from blog writing to copywriting. And they look like this, where there's some form of card, you click in, and then you get a form that lets you fill out something, and you can generate the copy of whatever you're looking to do. So whether it's a blog or an email, a campaign, it just is a very interactive experience, which is why people really like it. So I tried to recreate it at a very minimal level. So if we go to new tab here, you'll see that I've created 3 different tabs to kind of represent those cards that you'd find in Jasper. And when you click on each one, you can actually enter something. So if you go to this one and you could write something like a topic, it'll generate an SEO enriched article. If you go to explain a concept, this one I told it, hey, write an underlying prompt for OpenAI that will take a concept and break it down like you're a young person. So if you say, what is life? And you say, explain concept. It'll generate content, and it was smart enough to do actually 80% of this on its own. I went back and forth on it, on actually designing the cards to be cards, not drop downs. So you can see here, it takes a very complex topic and it simplifies it very easily. And then one of the suggestions that the Replit agent made was, hey, do you want to be able to provide feedback to the response to alter the response? So I thought that was cool. So I'd say, make it into poem format. And then if you say submit feedback, it will go to the last response. It'll rewrite it using the feedback that I gave it. So the altered output should be something that's along the lines of a poem. So you'll see here, it changes it to a poem. And what's crazy to me is that this one took a bit of back and forth. So I made this one actually today. I gave it more of a detailed prompt. And then going back and forth, probably will say 10, 15 times. Now I got stuck when it came to the actual drop downs themselves. It showed these as little icons that you could click down on and then enter the content. It didn't understand that I wanted it to have an actual interaction where I hover over and then click and then go to a new page. So that was, again, could be a conversation error, could be a prompting error from my end. But eventually, the idea is within 30 minutes, I was able to do something that if I spent 5 hours on, 10 hours on, maybe I could get it to be even 80% of what Jasper is, but for my needs tailored to me for the price of pretty much free outside of API tokens. But this is why I find this so powerful, because you can take existing SaaS applications you're paying for and maybe try to reverse engineer them now using this agent with little to no code. And all you have to do to actually deploy it is click on deploy, and then you can choose something like auto scale, set up your deployment, approve and configure settings, and I'll call this something like Mini Jasper Assistant if it's available. And then I can go to deploy, and then it'll take its time and it'll come up with a link, like an app link that you can access from pretty much anywhere, which again, is this differentiating factor from, let's say, Cursor or other apps where you have to get on some form of editor on your laptop. You have to understand how to install it, how to set it up. And if you're not technically savvy, you're not going to do those extra 3-4 steps. But with something like this, it's literally a conversation. You go back and forth, and you can have some form of meeting at work where you're thinking of a brand new product, a prototype, or an MVP of some concept. And you can actually now go from that meeting, take the meeting notes, turn it into a series of instructions or a very succinct instruction, and get that idea to actually come to life, to have a real conversation on what it might look like if you actually invested the resources to do it the right way. Now, for now, the right way is doing it the typical software engineering way, because again, when I look at the underlying code for this application, it's naturally good. It's not necessarily robust. So the code is written so that it works, but not necessarily that it works at scale or works with tons of dependencies. So this is really great, again, for ideation or initial testing, or going to market potentially with something very vanilla just to get some user feedback, and then you build it the proper way. A year from now, I think we'll have a very different conversation where you can go end to end and build a scalable app with no intervention, and it's optimized for scalability. So that remains to be seen, but for now, this is a beautiful tool to add to your tool set, irrespective of your background, whether you're an art major or a math major. And you'll see now you get this link here that you can click, and then you can use this app wherever. If I pull this into an incognito window or a different browser altogether, if I go here and I throw it into here, I can use it all the same, and I can write whatever. Write me an article about camels, generate SEO article, and then it'll work perfectly fine. And this is the aha experience, because you can now share this across your organization, your coworkers, colleagues, whoever, and really start playing and imagining beyond just talking about what it might look like. All right, so now the most awaited event is, can we create a web application using Replit AI Agent on our phones? And the answer is actually yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out my phone and I'll start recording from there. And then we're going to build an AI app together. And then we're going to go to create. We're going to go to start with an AI. And then I'm going to tell it something very basic. So let's say I want an app that helps me schedule my week based on a few inputs on my goals for the week when it comes to fitness, and making me a workout plan every day. So I'm just going to submit that. It's going to then, just like the web version, ask me to approve the plan. It's going to probably actually suggest a few more things. All right, so after waiting a minute, it tells me I've created a plan for a Streamlit-based web application that schedules your weekly workouts and fitness goals and generates daily workout plans. The app will allow you to input fitness goals, schedule, and daily workout plans. And then it gives me some more recommendations here. Let's be humble since it's on a mobile phone, and I'll just approve the plan, and it should start building. And it's going to look exactly like the browser version, except it's actually writing all the code on my mobile browser. It's put together all the code. It's now running something called Streamlit, which allows you basically to build very low fidelity web applications. And now you'll see on an in-browser within the app, it actually generates this workout plan generator. And I think to have a better experience, I should do it on desktop, but you can see here, I can choose my focus for the week and then click flexibility or cardio, beginner level, and then generate a workout plan. Now, one thing it didn't ask me for was my API key, but we'll see what it does if I click that. I think it'll not work, just because it probably needs some OpenAI API key, but you get the idea. You can literally, in the middle of a meeting or a pitch or on the way from your work, create some form of low fidelity application to bring a thought that you had into something you can actually hold, touch, and feel. So now hopefully this shows you that by no means are we at the stage where a software developer who's talented can just get automated tomorrow, but we are at the stage, or at least the beginnings of the stage, where the barriers to entry for anyone that's not technically savvy to actually create and touch and feel an idea they have in their head into something they could actually play with or even use depending on the scale of your work, we're actually at the stage where this is now possible. So take a look at the Replit Agent, take a look at the code that I put in the description below in the Gumroad link, play around, see what you can build, see what you want to build, and just start this journey because I think it's going to be a lot more fruitful over the coming months, especially with even more powerful models. If you love content like this, please leave a like and sub the channel. It really helps a lot, and I'll see you guys next time.